Hi everybody. I know what we're going through at the moment, but I came across these two people. This one here is Time. She's a friend of mine. 1933 Chronoscope with Charlotte Keppel is time travel, visual time travel in the 1930s. And then this hangout here is also about it. Pierre Sabak Sevan Bomar, Hidden Technologies and Secret Society. Come on everybody, watch these videos as they're putting out the information. I'm not sure if it's real, because do you know what it reminds me of? I'll show you what it reminds me of. Yeah, so there we go. Look, the same thing in The Wizard of Oz, and that's 1939. That's what it reminded me of. And as you can see, they've used it in this, and we well know that the witch was on this thing quite a lot. But anyway, two hangouts, two different channels. Please support them. Thanks very much.
I still cannot believe, and I don't want to be sexist about this, but that an ordinary woman in the 1930s could come up with this incredible machine which goes against all possible scientific theories and get results.
To this day, in our own time, someone as sui generis, shall we say, as Charlotte Keppel, who was so all-embracing, so all-encompassing in the breadth and stature of her gifts, is somehow effectively and consummately written out of history.
What all this is about is a narrative, how we create narratives and how we exclude from narratives. And Charlotte was a classic victim of exclusion. I didn't discover her until I was going through newspaper archives of the 1930s. And I came across this well-publicised young woman who was technologically brilliant, ahead of her time, who was really well known in Ireland.
We see the past all the time. Every time we stare into the nighttime sky at that vast myriad of stars, we're looking into the depths of time. The sheer vastness of space means that it can take millions of years for light to travel from a star to Earth. The Andromeda Galaxy, 2 million light years away from Earth. The supernova we see in that far-off galaxy actually happened 2 million years ago. If we could see the Earth then.
It is 1938, the end of a decade of unprecedented change. Madcap politics, social unrest, dingbat inventions, and exciting new scientific discoveries are all the rage. In the spring of that year, academics from around Europe gather for the presentation of one such discovery at Dublin's Royal Irish Academy. The discovery's author is a 28-year-old Irish woman by the name of Charlotte Keppel. Charlotte is a self-taught scientist. She comes from a long line of crackpot inventors. Obsessed by science from an early age, Charlotte spends her boarding school days fashioning Tesla coils out of hairpins and cutlery.
I came across an old yearbook from her convent. And within the pages of the yearbook, I discovered the most extraordinary story. The girls, as usual, after evening prayer, had returned to the refectory for their evening meal. No sooner had the Reverend Mother said grace before there was an extraordinary bang. Charlotte had actually blown the Sacré-Cœur dormer to bits in the course of experiments with Tesla coils.
Charlotte is promptly expelled from the nunnery. Liberated from the boundaries of a conventional education, Charlotte is free to serve apprenticeships with various physicists and chemists. It is during these years that Charlotte develops her revolutionary wave theory.
I'm Charlotte Keppel. I'm here today to talk to you about a new form of radiation I've discovered. A waveform with very similar properties to light. As we all know, light travels at a speed of 186,000 miles per second. Which means, what are we, 6 feet apart?
An estimate.
It takes approximately 6 nanoseconds for the light to travel from you to me. Which means, I'm seeing you as you were 6 nanoseconds ago. The waveform that I've discovered takes approximately 5 years. To travel that same distance.
Charlotte had stumbled onto something simple yet remarkable. Like the way astronomers see events in space as they happened millions of years ago, here is a slow-travelling waveform all around us, but invisible to the human eye, that carries with it information from the past. Upon this eloquent discovery, she built the Chronoscope, a machine that can detect these waves and render scenes of history in vivid images.
The thing looks like a Heath Robinson invention. You wouldn't think it could possibly work until you see that footage. I think most people thought there was a man behind her doing all the technical work, but she did it. It sounds so futuristic, and yet all this was happening in the late 30s.
Since revealing to the world the marvels of the Chronoscope, a machine that can see the past, the charming Miss Charlotte Keppel has become internationally famed. News of her discovery has spread around the globe like wildfire. In her native city of Dublin, Miss Keppel entertains an audience of historians and dignitaries, including the Prime Minister of Era, Mr. Eamon de Valera. In London, Mr. Albert Einstein welcomes her to the International Physics Convention. And this queer fellow is Lieutenant Colonel Copcroft. Copcroft commented that what astonished him the most about the whole affair was not that this came from the mind of a woman, but that she is Irish. And here's a more sinister admirer, Dr. Heinrich Freisler, an archaeologist from the Third Reich. Freisler has already made a bid for the Chronoscope, but our girl shows that crowd a clean pair of heels. Good show, Charlotte.
Freisler was one of those odd characters who perhaps really only discovered himself in jail. It was while he was in jail doing time after the failed putsch that he discovered archaeology, and he became a self-educated archaeologist with a lot of cranky ideas.
Der Neger hat einen dickknochigen Schädel als Schutz gegen Speere und einen kräftigen Unterkiefer.
This is one of Dr. Freisler's films. He made countless such productions with his colleague of dubious academic credentials, Oswald Poppendick.
You have to remember that Germany had been defeated at the end of World War I and was desperately humiliated because they were a military nation, and they wanted to restore pride to the German people. And they needed race theories to back up their policies. So a woman who had produced a machine which, as with television, could produce images of the present, she could produce images of the past, and they could prove to the world that they were right.
Not everyone shares Dr. Freisler's enthusiasm for Charlotte and her Chronoscope.
Charlotte got into trouble with the Catholic Church because it seemed her Chronoscope was going to give them a view into the past when they were looking for the canonization of this man, Father Matthew. For her technology to reveal the flaws in Father Matthew was, well, it was a political disaster. Look, it wasn't long before this that the Committee for Evil Literature had promulgated a ban on references to menstruation. So can you imagine the impact this had on a society that was run by a committee against evil literature? Can you imagine?
Charlotte stokes further controversy when she insults a group of nationalist historians with images of their heroes in the 1916 Rising that don't quite match the glorified historical narrative being taught to Irish schoolchildren.
Miss Keppel was previously celebrated as an example of a truly modern Irish woman. This reinforces the dictum that women should stay by the fireside. She's disgraced herself and her people, her womanhood and the church. She's a poison which secretly but effectively corrupted the heart and undermined the virtue of the whole country. This blowing needs to blow out, and if she doesn't, she'll blow up and the Chronoscope with her.
There were attempts to break up the machine. Late at night, there was ferocious pounding at the door, and masked men arrived in. They threatened to cut Charlotte's hair off, and they said that they would kick her machine from here to Cork, with her in it.
Her spirit almost broken, Charlotte nevertheless presses on with her research, despite the intrusion of the public and newspaper hacks.
My machine was built purely as a tool for scientific research. Intention is, and always has been, in the interest of science. Help us understand the truth about our past.
But on the evening of March the 9th, 1939, her work is rudely interrupted.
Sowie der Reichsmarschall heißen die berühmte Wissenschaftlerin Frau Charlotte Keppel willkommen im Deutschen Reich. Frau Keppel hat die Einladung angenommen, um den herausragenden Archäologen Dr. Heinrich Freisler bei seiner Erforschung des arischen Volkes zu unterstützen. Mit Hilfe des Chronoscopes werden sie Deutschlands glorreiche Vergangenheit aufdecken und der Welt überwältigende Bilder von der Entstehung der arischen Rasse darbieten.
Helmut Buhler was a young officer on the expedition.
Ja, diese Expedition war ein einziges Desaster. Dieses Chronoskop ließ von Dr. Freisler nichts mehr übrig. Bei Ausgrabungen zum Beispiel kamen nicht deutsche, sondern polnische Sachen zustande. Wir kamen an Städten, wo angeblich früher mal fantastische, großartige deutsche Städte gestanden hatten. Aber in dem Chronoskop konnte man nichts anderes sehen als Generationen von kleinen, fetten Menschen, die mit ihren Schweinen zusammen in Schlammhütten wohnten.
When you're dealing with myth, you're dismantling something very close to people's identity. And you cannot touch myth without being at risk, in a very real sense, sometimes of your own life.
As the months slip by, Charlotte's defiance turns to fear. as pressure mounts on her to produce a satisfactory image for the Nazi Party. A battle rages between the Nazis' desperate hunger for images to validate their philosophy and the visions provided by the Chronoscope. It reaches crisis point.
Ich döste vor mich hin und wurde plötzlich aufgeschreckt von dem Geschrei von Dr. Freisler, der behauptete, dass der Apparat von der jungen Frau sein gesamtes Lebenswerk als Archäologe zerstört. Er wurde immer wütender und begann mit seinem Haken auf das Chronoskop einzuschlagen. Sie versuchte, das Chronoskop zu verteidigen, aber er blieb irgendwie mit dem Haken in dem Chronoskop hängen. Es gab eine riesige Explosion. Das war das Letzte, was man von Dr. Freisler je gehört hat.
Around the world, the news of Charlotte's sentence is received with dismay. Allied leaders petition the Reich government for clemency, but their pleas fall on deaf ears. The Nazi ideologues thirst for Charlotte's blood. The prison authorities announced that Charlotte's execution is to be carried out on the following day hence. Charlotte had fashioned a Tesla coil out of bed springs, forks, and hairpins. She plugged the object into the cell's light bulb socket. It created a massive power surge. The Gestapo records reveal that Charlotte crossed the border into Switzerland 2 weeks later. After this, her trail disappears.
What do I think became of Charlotte? I mean, speculation in many respects is kind of pointless in this. And there have been many mythologies and many rumours that have grown up inevitably around the figure of Charlotte Keppel.
Well, there are some theories that she went to South America, which is very ironic because that's where the war criminals went.
She was written out of history. Her technology was written out of history. And, you know, almost within a year, almost everyone had forgotten that there had been this thing called the Chronoscope, which could look back into the past. Why? Because they didn't want to know about it.
Charlotte, now quietly, and it seems deliberately, slipped forever from the public sphere. The eventual fate of the 20th century's greatest female scientist remains, to this day, a mystery.
Our history books are simply a record of the heroic deeds and follies of the ruling classes. The Chronoscope is a tool of enlightenment, to shine a light into the dark, forgotten areas of our past. It has shown us that history is written by man, but that the history of mankind is written forever in light.
Long ago, I think of 300 or 400 years. Like I'm not sure how fast a reality can be reset. But here's one picture here, and it just shows that that this electromagnetism was being used as a way. And I have several of these images, and they all appear to be very authentic. And I'm going to put that up here now, and I'll blow that up and make sure that everybody can see that on my side. Let's see here. Let me push this over. There we go. And then let me move this out of the way. So there's several of these images, and they're way more detailed. Like this is actually the least detailed image, and it basically just shows the construction. Actually, here's another one, and even the guy's got his hand in the coat, like the hidden hand. And where this is all starting to come from is this Tartarian knowledge, which is basically the idea that there was an entire civilization out in the area that's now what we call Russia, called Tartaria, and they had actually reached a rather high state of advancement in using especially electronics, and that actually there was no oil and combustion, that they were actually using these electrical energies.
Have you, back to the other one, just move the other one back. I want to have a look at that. That's the one. No, not that one there. Yeah. Have you noticed the signifier there?
Yes, the hand in the coat.
The hidden hand.
The hidden hand.
Now, the hidden hand in this respect is Yad al-Jazza, which is the hand of the giant, which is in Orion. So it's the star constellation Orion. So this is the knowledge of the Gibberim, or the giants. Now, Sir Isaac Newton himself alluded to this knowledge. He said, I have stood on the shoulders of giants. Now, at one level, it's referring to Eton, because the Anglo-Saxon noun Eton means a giant, but the Eton is another word for the Nephilim. So it's this knowledge which goes back to Nephilia, which is Orion. And as we said before, when you begin to break down the holographic construct, then not only can you time travel, but you can then go into the imaginal realm, this which Plato talks about. And this is what you're actually seeing here. And can you see the hand as well? Again, the hand on the left picture again is another symbol of the hidden hand. So this is knowledge of electromagnetism, which is connected to the spiritual world. And so I think that's very fun. I've never seen those photographs before, and I think that's absolutely
I'll send them over to you, so that way you can do your own thorough examination, because I feel like also in many of these images you actually see other symbolism that is very telltale.
And you've got the skull as well, haven't you? So
it's almost like a reanimation process. Yeah.
And again, he's got his hand hidden
in his coat, and he's got a little wand down there. And CGI, I mean, Photoshop only gets you so far, so this ain't Photoshop. We be in Photoshop all day.
I think that these are genuine photographs. They look like genuine. He's got his hat as well, which is again part of this secret society network. If you look at the jar as well, because the jar within symbolism.
Oh yeah, the pot, right, with the gin in there, maybe.
Yeah. Pandora's box, which was a type of urn, which was for burying the dead. So when she opens the urn, she releases the spirits. And so, again, this is a cytological symbol of the Ophanim wheels, because the Ophanim wheels, the Ruach Elohim, are the high spirits, but they are physical or particular. And again, let's have a look at this. Yes, and everything is based upon this idea of magnetism, isn't it? You've got
that's right. And as being a person who also works with electronics and things, like from an engineering level, everything down here looks pretty much like what would be needed to accomplish this. So it's not like you just see again photoshopped in certain pieces that it's like that's not functional. This would be functional. Transistor tubes, electricity, and then a reanimation, as if, like you were saying before, that if there's all these realms are existing simultaneously, this is a way to actually tap into a person and bring them, like a TV, like what we would want TV to be now. Like, let me talk to grandma 50 years ago, or somebody that's dead.
I mean, on the Fringe, they talked about this, didn't they, in terms of seeing different realities on the screen. But if you look at the photograph here on the screen, we're seeing these coils, and these coils are representative of the aeon. The aeon is the age. So within Gnostic idea, the emanation of universal forms or the implicated order into the particular realm, which is physical reality. So again, we're looking here at something which is very symbolic with the curtain as well, which is the veil and the revealing of the spiritual, the crossover between the spiritual or the imaginal realms and the physical realms. And this is why ghosts again.
And you know, the other thing, Pierre, I would like to, you know, just bring into this, and we're almost done here, but
look
how
at the
there's a
circle
lot.
and the wheel as well. Look, so you've got the opening wheel and the circle. The circle and the wheel are interchangeable. So this
Yes.
idea of this knowledge which is connected to the opening, which again are the Ruach Elohim, the high spirits.
You know,
so, yes.
Pierre, I have one of these books from ancient Aleppo, like I guess it's the Mystic Order of the Shrines. It's one of their books. And the only thing that I wanted to notate out of this book is just how many men are actually in this book. Is it way more people in secret societies than the common concept? Because it seems like this book is almost 80 years old and it's full of men. They own the railroad companies, they own the power companies, and it just goes on and on and on and on. How many people are in these societies, would you say?
I don't know. I don't know, because I'm not a part of the circle of knowledge.
Right.
And I'm not, I wouldn't ever compromise myself in that way. So I really don't know. But from what we can ascertain, it's pervasive. It's everywhere. And we see that with corporate logos. We see that within the media. It's absolutely everywhere. So if you want to be anyone or anybody, you have to be a part of these organizations often. Most
right.
of, you know,
that was their old paradigm, right? They've been holding a monopoly on this technology, and it even seems like, again, like these are old pictures, like these are Quakers in a certain sense. So it's not necessarily an advanced technology; it's a certain stage of awareness, right?
Well, Facebook, the Hebrew word panim, which is face, is where you get the etymology of pana, which is to turn, and the word ophan, which is a wheel. So when God is talking to Moses, the term is used face, but the word etymology is related to turn, which is related to a wheel. So the face of God is actually a wheel.
Wow, that's incredible, because even when I came into that awareness of the words, when I wrote the book, The Code of the Matrix, it basically was explained to me that it was turning wheels in my mind, that my mind had previously a broken wheel because of the language and not being able to connect it. And then now with this additional insight of how all the words were similar, that I was turning a complete wheel. And through that, I actually answer anything based on more of an algorithm than an actual awareness of knowledge. So it's like a sequence rather than data compiling. And I think that's also the future of future of storage of data, is more of storing it in sequences that can be unpacked rather than large bits and bytes that actually amount to large amounts of data. It just is just algorithms.
Yeah.
So, wow.
I think that's very interesting. Yeah. And again, I think we'll move away from this kind of like binary system, and probably will produce at least this third element, this potentiality, where it's neither one nor the other. It's so again,
somehow a synthesis, right?
This quantum computers.
Okay, I guess somebody may have took over the screen. Okay, so what we're going to do is that I will say, you know, this has been amazing for me, you know, as far as being able to connect in. I had the initial sound issues. I was a little bit concerned about not even being able to get in and ask some questions and even mediate the conversation from a level of getting just your awareness out on the table, because I feel like you have so much information. I mean, it's in the volumes of your book. So getting you to speak towards specific things is also necessary. And so I look forward to our next build where we can do that. Maybe we go on YouTube Live and give some love out there. I'll also, you know, I'll talk to you about this, but maybe with your permission, I'd love to get this on the YouTube so people can get their minds blown for a minute, but then seed it back into their consciousness about, you know, hey, this is big time. Like either you're going to come up to the plate here, or somebody else is going to.
You see, this is the thing as well, and I think this is particularly in terms of the scatological tradition, this tradition of angelic vessels, which is this classified tradition, classis and naval fleet. It's been hidden from humanity for a long time. And in terms of deconstructing religion, relegatum, or a vessel worship, which ship is a boat, it's really an important component. And it underscores everything. So you cannot understand the religious tradition without understanding the scatological tradition. But unfortunately, it's a classified tradition. It's a hidden tradition. The naval tradition is a classified tradition. Where it's found in all cultures, it's universal. And so the concept of the angelic sailor, and I know kind of it was bandied about for many years, like with Van Duyniken, but it was never tangible. His ideas were philosophically interesting, but that was it. But this,
Yes.
we can be scientific about this, and this is important because academia is scoffing at this, but yet they don't understand the tradition of the angelic sailor, and it's so integral to decoding the ancient scriptures. It's integral to understanding everything, the origin on this planet and everything. And so there has been this systematic attempt to undermine this within academia. I don't actually think that the Illuminati are too bothered what the general man thinks. They're more bothered about what the academics thinks. They're more bothered about the people who push the buttons, the administrators, the people who control and steer ideology. They're the ones who are interested in. And therefore, this is why there has been the systematic attempt to undermine this subject, which is a very serious subject and should be taken seriously within academia. And so I think programs like this is really helping to hopefully to re-educate the general population, so that when we start talking about things like ancient aliens, people are not going to begin to scoff and laugh at themselves, but take it seriously, because the tradition which goes back into the ancient world. As we said before, this idea of abduction is not a new idea. It goes back into the ancient languages, and it goes back to the scaphological tradition, which is essentially going back to the tradition of flying saucers. This is no longer speculation. I have proved this within my books. Before, we just didn't know, but I have demonstrated this within my book, that the angelic sailor is linked into the ufological tradition. We now know this to be a fact, and it's pivotal to understanding everything within the religious and mythological tradition. And it's not known about. People in ufology just don't know about this.
Right. You know, it's almost like they're there to distract from it. Like they miss the mark completely. They take it either literal or over spiritual, but no research, no foundation. So it puts it into the quackery kind of aspect, or the conspiracy theory type of aspect of thing, which is exactly where they would want it, because it keeps you from dissecting it fully, which locks us out of the mysteries. And there it is.
Exactly. I mean, you know, my son has got more subscribers than me. You know what I mean? This is how bad it is. It's really, but yeah, this is so important to understanding everything, because it's going back into so many different traditions in terms of our knowledge base. Human beings are suffering from amnesia. We are suffering from amnesia, and we need to learn about this, because there is this occult has rewritten everything. And it's rewritten religion, it's rewritten mythology, and it's concealed behind who I describe as the decipherati, the deceivers. They are these custodians of this knowledge. They are the protectorate of this knowledge. And they know about this knowledge. Whether you're in Japan with the Utsu no Fune, which are these guarding the shrines, which are symbolic of these hollow ships, and not Utsu no Fune, which is a hollow vessel. These vessels are physical and solid. They were buried underneath the temples. And so when we talk about the nuts and bolts of ufology, and remember, look at even the wordplay, bolts as in a boat and bolts, you know, they're always telling us the obvious in terms of the symbolism, and they are obsessed with symbolism. And there is this codified discourse, this private discourse, which is found throughout the language of politics. If you are interested in politics and you're listening to the politicians, listen to the codified speech. Listen to what they're saying. What is the subtext behind what they are saying? And this is important. We need to be literate in terms of symbolism to be able to decode what the Illuminati themselves are saying. And this priesthood goes back to the Akzari, a brother of light. But as we said, the Arabic word Akzari, a brother of light, is a wordplay on Akzari, a brother of an angel. But the word Zar, an angel, is Zar, which is an alien. So we need to be going back to the traditions of the Akzari, the brothers of the light, which is going back to the seraphim, Pythonagoras, the speaker of the serpent, or the Pythagorean tradition, which goes back to Sirius. And this is found encoded within the classical orders, within the classical symbolism, within the two orders of the Illuminati, the Harrow Society and the two pillars of Freemasonry, and is found within the tripartite Illuminati, or the three orders of the Illuminati, which is essentially this anthropos, the anthropos being this human non-human element and then this grafted element. And it's going back into the saucer cults and how they how the votive dish is represented as a flying saucer in which they worshipped ship is to venerate these angelic vessels. Goes back to the saucer. And it goes back to the dialectic, the seraphim cherubim dialectic, this partition of knowledge between non-human and human angels, this humanist tradition and then this non-human element, where essentially we're dealing here with the angelic host, because they appear, often the angelic host appear together. So if you look at within classical carving, you'll find that the serpent chariots, the ophanim, the wheels are combined with the seraph, which is the seraphic host. And then you'll see often an angel with a sword, which would be cherub, which is a word play, and cherub, which is a sword. Again, these because they are part of the military contingent. They were representing the angels as marines, space marines in a literal sense, and these angelic sailors, the angelic mariner. It's so pivotal to understanding everything. And I've been talking about this for, I've been talking about it now for a long time, and no one's paying attention. It's like, I think that this biggest discoveries in theologies, it's massive. The scatological tradition, nobody knows about it, but it's integral to understanding everything within the religious tradition. And nobody's talking about it within ufology. I've done lectures and I've gone around talking about this, and it seems like no one is actually paying attention, but it is so integral to understanding everything. So I think you're right, we do need to talk about